I'm Mel Rainsberger. I run the 48-Hour Film Project. I put together this program. I work with our fiscal sponsor, Kindling, who have been really excellent, so I want to thank them. We want to expand things like this, do more educational programming, more learning, more hands-on stuff, more interacting with the local community, local filmmakers of all kinds, and this is like the first step in really doing that. I gotta take a breath because pollen and stuff and mask. Yeah, I also really want to thank RISCA, the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts. They gave us a grant that generously paid for the space, it paid for our speakers, and it's really wonderful to be able to present things like this to you. I am so just excited and wonderful. If you have any questions, I'm gonna be over there answering them. If you have any concerns, I'm here to answer them. The bathroom is back there. We put a little sign on it. We have one bathroom, it's gender neutral. Obviously, a lot of you have found the coffee, donuts, water, etc., but if you need anything else, let me know. We're gonna have lunch here about 11:30, 12. It's all gonna be box lunches from Whole Foods. It will also have water and usually like a fruit or a cookie and a sandwich. We have your orders written down, so if you don't remember, it is totally fine. We remembered them for you. And I also want to say thank Dan of Retina Creative Labs for letting us use this space. It's a really great space to check out. It is a working video studio. They shoot things here. They have shot, I'm sure some people here will say what they shot here. Some people have worked here already, but I think some stuff for Lego was shot here. Just all sorts of really interesting stuff. And it's just so great to strengthen and grow the Providence and Rhode Island filmmaking community. And I heard some of you were from Rhode Island, and it's totally fine. We love you too. And so I'm gonna present our keynote speaker, and then we'll have a little bit of a break, and then we'll have Erin, I think is after that, and then we'll have lunch, Ben, Dan, and Raz. And if you didn't get an agenda, we have agendas up there. You can take notes on them, so if you learn anything really important, you can save them. Thank you, Layla, for demoing them. Yeah, and without further ado, let's get started. Thank you for coming to the first ever Kindling Industry Training Studio. Woo!
My name is Layla. I have worked in the studio many a times. So it's a good one for projects and whatnot. Sorry. There. All right. So how many of you guys have worked on a film before? That's a pretty good number. That's awesome. So as you guys know, there's so much about film that is wonderful, and I'm also going to share some of the negatives and the downfalls of film because I feel, after 15 years of being in this industry, that I wish I had one of those heads up before I really delve headfirst. So my story, basically, why you should care about anything I'm saying. I've been working in film for 15 years. My very first project, I was a PA on a commercial. I don't even remember what year that was. So I did commercials for a while, and then I got onto a film set. My background is in construction. My dad's a contractor. I used to do theater and set design and building. So I showed up on my first film set, and they were like, you know how to build stuff. You're ours now. And that was many years ago, and then I joined the art department. So for me, I'm gonna be talking about film from the art department's point of view, more so than, say, camera or sound or anything. It's one of the departments that, unfortunately, on the lower end projects, like the less money, the less you're probably going to need an art department or have the money for an art department. You're going to spend your money on sound and camera and actors and stuff. But I personally find it, obviously it's my job, so I'm going to say this. It's one of the more important things, I think. So one of the big differences that you're going to find out as you continue this journey into film and commercials and everything else you do, the difference between low and low budget films, indies and those, versus a high budget union film is like night and day. it's completely different. So a lot of the times people come onto union film sets saying, I have been on a film set, I know what to do. And you're like, great, what's your job? And they're like, oh, I can do this, 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 and this. And you're like, cool, what one of those would you like to do? So indie film sets, I'll show up on a set as the production designer, and I will, on some shows, I was art department. When I first started doing this, my first production design job, it was me. That was it. I was props, I was wardrobe, I was construction, scenic, everything. So when I was like, yeah, I got to be a production designer, this is the career I want, talking to someone who's been doing it on other films, they're like, oh, cool, did you do renderings? Did you have your construction team, like all this other stuff? And it's like, oh, no, that was just me. And I'm sure as you guys start, that's going to be a lot of what it is. It's you, and you're going through your closets and pulling stuff out and trying to use what you have, because I still do that. It's one of the best ways to make a budget go farther. So when you get onto large film sets, when I production design on those, I have an art director, I have a lead person, I have a decorator, I have set dressers, I have scenic, I have construction, I have props, I have a whole team. So my team goes from, on small shows, I can get between 3 and 4 people to work for me within the budget that I'm given. On larger sets, sometimes props is 15 people alone. That's that. And I'll pause for a second. So when you're getting into film, how many people want to get into film to be in camera? Just curious. Okay. Acting? How about sound? Okay. How about art department? All right, we got one. So I'm talking to one person here. Or I'm talking to all of you, and now I gotta convince you that you wanna come over to the dark side. So I'm gonna look at my outline real quick, because I did make myself one so that I didn't get fully distracted. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna talk about the very basics, the definition of set design and the definition of props. So a prop is anything that the actor is interacting with. The microphone, this would be a prop. Water bottle would be a prop. Same with the computer. It's anything that the actor is interacting with on set. There gets to be some serious gray areas though. So that one, on low budget films, it's not as big of an issue, but as you get into bigger ones. So eyeglasses. Eyeglasses are props. Sometimes earrings are, sometimes they're not. Wedding rings are props. So are purses. So one of the issues that you sometimes can run into is your wardrobe person will have a wonderful design for your character. It's like, say it's, sorry, I was looking around to see if I knew anyone really well so I could just pick on them. So say they're dressing our dear friend Raz, because I know him very well, so I can kind of pick on him. And the wardrobe person is like, okay, this gentleman, we're gonna go with a color palette of some yellows, some blues, some greens. Their patterns are gonna be plaids, not much else, and their style is a little bit more casual. So that's what wardrobe has for this character on paper. Then they show up and props will be like, oh, okay. Well, props has glasses for him, they have bags for him, they have all this stuff, but now they have this fancy briefcase for him. And it's like, well, that doesn't really fit. Now they've got polarized aviators, and I'm sure he could pull them off, but that's not necessarily the character style. So sometimes it gets a little bit, there needs to be a lot of communication. it's like the entirety of a film set is just a lot of relationships with various people. It's you're making sure you have positive relationships with wardrobe, with camera, with sound for various reasons. There's sometimes where people don't necessarily take other departments into consideration, and I think that's where a lot of strife can be, a lot of butting of heads can happen from that. So I know wardrobe and sound, they butt heads from time to time based on clothing. I mean, I'll let them talk about that, but there's a lot of overlap between different departments, and so if you're not talking to your other departments, then you're going to have some issues. You're going to create something that's not as fluid as you might be able to anyway. So that's kind of props. And like I said, there's some things that you wouldn't think are props. And the crossover with set deck, which I'll get into after, is if an actor is going to be interacting with something eventually. Say, in your script, the actor is going to go and pick up a book from a bookshelf. It's going to be a specific book or a specific magazine, something to carry your storyline along, whatever that may be. So now, as a person in the set dressing and production design, you need to make sure that there are magazines and books dressed in that look natural. So it's not like you're walking on to something like this and you're like, oh, my actor needs to arrive here and pick up a magazine. Cool, well, it will look very out of place if you don't do it well. So that's kind of that crossover there, where props needs to be in contact with them, especially because a lot of the time, props department is getting everything that they have ahead of time. They're making that magazine specialized. It's a cover that they designed, had someone else design. Set deck, they have it in their mind. They see that in the script. They have to have magazines everywhere. So they're like, all right, coffee table, living room, put a couple other magazines there. So it's like, they're walking in and they're not just going, huh, the one magazine here. It's like, oh, it's dressed in, it looks like it's meant to be. That's one of the big things. Set dressing or production design is whatever goes in front of the camera. Whatever is on the set, production designer is in charge of everything that goes in front of the camera. Whether it's on the set, they're also in charge of the color combos, so they're gonna work with the director and the DP, the director of photography, to come up with a color palette that works for everybody. One instance when they don't talk is one DP that I've worked with hates the color red. Hates it. Hates it on any film set they see. I know when I work with them, you don't put red on the set. I also work with someone that likes to be a nudge to that director of photography and likes to hide red items on the sets. Just to see. There's a red apple here, there's something there. But it's so important to have that harmony, I feel personally. I feel like you can work more harmoniously with other departments and everything is just far more better. More better? Sure, why not? I'm from Hawaii, mo better. So the production designer is in charge of all of that. They delegate to the variety of different departments. They also delegate to the props and to wardrobe. They're putting the color palette out so that they're saying, hey, my color palette is grays, blues, I'll add some golds in, whatever it is. So that way, when wardrobe is dressing their people, they're not clashing with the set, hopefully. On one set that I did, we had this chair that was a key set dressing piece. It was, a character who is very set in his ways, wants to keep his life well, but he makes bank somehow and then, is very wealthy, but he takes that chair along with him because it's his comfort. So we had it reupholstered. So we had this whole trick with this stupid chair that we had the reupholstery to come on and off depending on when we were filming and when this chair needed to be in. The fabric was this very paisley, very loud, obnoxious red chair. The fabric had fabric samples sent to wardrobe. They had the color palettes, everything. We show up on the day, and our actor is in a red silk bathrobe that just blends completely into this chair. So now we have this chair that has played in various parts of the movie, is a key part. We've spent plenty of money and time, and now we're covering it up with a blanket. Just throwing a gold blanket over it because you can't see the actor. He's a floating head in a chair, and that just doesn't look good, so we had to fix it. Stuff like that happens, and it's so frustrating, which is why I feel communication is always a good idea. So we are... So I know you guys are more interested in cameras and, you know, the fun tech of the film, because, I mean, I was too, I'll be honest, but yes.
Talk about that for a second. Definitely talk to me because I write and I want to be a better director.
Okay.
So I need to know how the departments talk to each other or whether they should be talking to each other.
Yes, they should.
I think the better audience is.
All right, well, that works. All right, sounds good. Yeah. I'm just gonna, you know, untangle myself. So when I got into the art department, as I said, I was a PA. You know, I was really great at grabbing the perfect cup of coffee, I gotta say. I'm just gonna pat myself on the back for that one. And if you're just getting into film, that is a great skill to learn. And if you have any sort of memory, remember what the key people order. Because I have to say, I've been on sets where I've had someone walk up to me and they're like, oh, here's your cup of coffee. And I'm like, oh, this is like the exact cup of coffee that I drink. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna hire that person again. 100%, because now they're taking care of me. So when I was a PA, that was my I got everybody's order right. I was best friends with the DP because he had a sweet tooth, so I made sure I had snacks going for him. I made sure that everybody was my buddy and I knew what people needed, which is very helpful. You know, the next time I ended up on a show, I was no longer a PA, I was an art director. Mind you, this was an art department of 2 for props and everything. But going from a PA to someone in the art department was a really fun change. I wasn't expecting. I was actually expecting to go into camera because I was a photographer. I was a wedding photographer prior to all that. So in my head, I was like, I know cameras. I'm going to be in the camera department. I also know tools and I know design. So somehow that ended up being where I continued my path, and I'm not mad about it to this day. I mean, there's the times where I'm like, I really want to get on that commercial. It looks really fun. And they're just like, oh yeah, no, there's no art department on that commercial. And I'm like, oh, okay. They're like, yeah, no, they're just throwing up a background and putting a plant. That's it. I'm like, but that sounds awful. Yeah, but they need the money to go towards the actor and the camera and the sound, and it's just the way it goes. So there is that negative, which I gotta say. One thing that my husband wanted me to touch on, because he finds it a fascinating thing that I do that I didn't realize, is the difference between macro and micro set dressing. So if you're looking at a set, let's take Dan's pink set back there. That set is a macro set. The walls are painted, there's a couch in there, there's a chair, it's the large details. The macro aspect is the deep background. If this is what it is, you're gonna see that in the far background. You're not gonna need to pay too much attention to it, but you still want it to look good. You'll throw some jackets on, the coat hooks, maybe a piece of art. But other than that, that's probably it. Whereas if this is a set that's similar, which it has been many a times, you're going to focus on the stuff that's closer up. It's the stuff directly in front of the camera. So you want to spend more time and more money of your budget on stuff that's going to actually get seen. The other part of it is the up close stuff you get to get a little more creative with for yourself. So one of the things that I love doing, we're filming in a house. You know, our characters, they're a family. It's just, the daughters may be into music, the son's into sports. That's all we know about them. We know nothing. We know that much about the kids. We know a little bit more about the parents, but not much. So the macro set dressing, tables, chairs, couch, bed, the typical things that you would have in a house, things that you need to have for things to happen. Whereas the micro stuff starts to be a watch on the side table, a glass of water, a book, stuff that you would have on your side table. In the girls' room, so she plays music once in this film, but if that's something she's interested in, you throw some sheet music. She's a teenager, so it's probably not what she's doing now. So there's posters of bands, there's piano sheet music kind of stuffed into places to kind of show. There's trophies of, other things that she would have done. It's using the micro set dressing to help to enhance the character. It's something that people might not notice. I mean, I've seen so many films that I've worked on that, I've worked 3 weeks on one set and you see it for 20 seconds. You will work for two seconds on a set. The director is like, we were filming this way, and I know you did this whole set here. I think I want to see this. And you're like, it's so ugly. Why? So now you're scrambling. You're just trying to do whatever. And that set that took you 2 seconds to throw together on a whim that you're just like, okay, what else do we need? That one gets 10 minutes of playtime in a film. And you're like, really? I mean, if I had more time, I would have put something there. I'm really awful to watch movies with. I'm going to admit this now. And I'm sure many of you are as well, or will be the further in you get. Because it's kind of just an issue that happens when you get into film. You analyze everything. So, let's see. All right, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the negatives of film because no one shares that. So my analogy for film is that it feels like a drug sometimes. You end up on a commercial, you make great money, it's easy, it's fun, it's run and gun, and you're like, this is the best thing ever. This was so fun. I love that this is my career. Then you show up on a film set and it's -3 degrees and you're filming in a quarry at night and you are so cold that you have 10 layers on, the porta potties are frozen over, there is no warm place to hang out, and the director is asking you to saw a hole in the side of a trailer and make it look like an explosion happened by morning. It's -3 degrees. Do you know what happens to batteries when it's really cold? They don't work. We're in the middle of a quarry. You gotta get real creative. So we got that fully done. And then I went to sit at a diner, and now I'm covered in dirt, paint, fake blood, and whatever else, because I'm working on a horror thriller film. And I'm sitting there trying to feeling back in my fingers going, what am I doing to myself? I'm not even getting paid enough for this. And I'm getting frostbite, I'm not sleeping, I'm getting screamed at, I'm getting unrealistic expectations put on me. This is crap, I'm out, I'm done. that lasts, until the next phone call. But for that little bit, you're like, no, it's like that bad trip. You have a bad experience and you're just like, no, this is bad for me. This is not good for my relationships, for my social life, for my clean house, anything. It's not good for me, but we do it anyway because it's addicting. And you get to be technical and creative and social, and you get to use so many different facets of who you are as a person, not just that one. On some jobs that you go to, I know I was trying to talk you out of it, now I'm talking into it. But you go to some jobs and they want you for the one thing that you can do. It's like, oh, you're a really good typer, you're just gonna sit and type. In art department, it would be like, oh, you're a great typer, you are in the office, you're gonna come do this. But at the same point, then you're sitting in an office and the director's coming through, the actors are coming through, it's completely different than every other day on set, and it's a lot of fun. And they suddenly throw you another project. So as well as typing, you're now doing other stuff, and you're getting utilized for more than just one skill that you have, which is one of the more addicting things, I think. But film sets, as you guys have been on them, as I've asked, you work from 12 to 14 hours on a set. You wrap and you drive an hour home. You start working at 4 a.m. and you get done at 6 p.m. Yeah. Sure.
Since you found some to develop sets, the regular obviously it's a lot different ones. What are some skills that you've developed to get better at each set? Is it color theory? Is it you have sort of really nice chairs? How do you improve from each set? Is it just watching one movies? How do you develop your skills?
That is a great question. So that is a hard question in just the sense that the art department is so diverse. When you get into the big films, my job as a production designer and usually lands me in an office, which isn't my favorite. So on larger films, I like to be a decorator, which is a couple steps below, but their job is to just make sure that the production designer's vision is going through on set. They're the ones doing all the micro adjustments and stuff. So the difficulty, I guess, is the best answer is picking what you want to go towards. For me, once I became a production designer, I did drafting for theater. I did drafting with my dad. So it was something that I had an understanding for. So when it was like, oh, this is stuff you do, it was second nature to me and I got into it. But then you get to learn all sorts of other aspects of it. My husband is a scenic artist. He is also in the film industry. He is a photorealistic painter and sculptor. Stupid talented. It's really, really irritating. So for me, I started learning more drafting, taking AutoCAD classes. Color theory is great. I started buying a lot of interior design books on my favorites currently are the different eras of design, because I've done a lot of historical films, and so there's a lot of research on those. So if I can get ahead of the game with research ahead of time. So Raz and I worked on a film a couple years ago that was set in the 70s. So we were doing a house that was set in the 70s. So ahead of time, I researched the heck out of 50s, 60s, and 70s. The colors that came up, the patterns that were of the time, the styles, things that some of the more of the middle class houses would have. Because a lot of the time when you're looking at research, they are giving you a higher end house, I guess. So they're showing you what an actual designed house from that era would look like if you only designed it from that era, not taking into account that in the 70s, if you had a house in the 70s, there would still be things from the 60s and the 50s. When was that house built? That one was built in the 1800s, so that was a little different. But it had stuff from each era before. So it's researching that. It's looking at color theory. It's looking at this. I mean, I go to a lot of thrift stores, flea markets, stuff like that. Those are also really great things to have in your back pocket. Like just knowing where the things that are really cool, that are on the less expensive side to save your budget. So for that 70s, finding things that are period appropriate can get very expensive, especially for the 70s. It's very retro, and that retro is in right now. Mid-century modern, it's super fun, beautiful, very in, very expensive. Unless you find the thrift store finds, the Tupperwares from the time area, the stuff. I raided my mom's kitchen too. She was a little upset that I stole all of the Tupperwares that were from that time period, and then filled them with blood. It was beet juice, but So you could specialize your films once you get farther in. For a long time, all I did were horror films. And it wasn't that I was trying to specialize, it was just that I had gotten really good at doing horror films, from getting one, being offered a second one, and going, great, what can I do better? What can I learn now to do better for this next one that I didn't know for the first one? So then I went into the second one, far more, knowledgeable than the first. Then suddenly I'm 5 in, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting really sick of overnights and getting covered in fake blood. I'm done with that. So then I moved on, and I started doing Hallmark films for a while. Those were worse. My mother-in-law does too, and I have worked on, like I said, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've worked on things from Little Women, Hubie Halloween. I've worked on films that you will never see and hopefully never will see. I've worked on commercials that everyone sees, and I've worked on commercials that, again, no one should see. My mother-in-law has only seen my Hallmark films. She's seen one Lifetime one, and it was a little too tough for her. Hallmark films are, I work with a gentleman, a friend of mine. We've worked together for many years. We became closer friends from working on more Hallmark films together. He doesn't read the script anymore. And I showed up on set and I was like, are you serious? And for him, he's like, well, I'm in charge of basically the wording wise, he's in charge of the macro. He's like, oh, it's a house, it's a cabin, it's Christmas. I've worked on so many of these, I know what Hallmark wants. And then there's me, where I'm like, this is my second, third one, whatever it is, but I still read the script, and now I'm stressed out, and now I'm like, and then I'm sitting there with him, and Hallmark has a brand Bible, as do a lot of companies when you're doing commercials. So they have the color palette you're going to use. They have the structure of how it should go. For hair, makeup, and wardrobe, they have exactly how much makeup each woman should be wearing. They have how modest or immodest they're allowed to be. They have a whole list and structure. The thing that affected me was Christmas needs to be in every shot, every frame. So you're doing a close-up, and you're doing, here to here, and they want Christmas in every shot. So now you're trying to put something deep background. You're like, just put a poinsettia on a table, I don't know. You're like, it kind of shows up, you see it in the background, something. We use poinsettias everywhere, to the point where I finally was like, this makes no sense. And the production manager goes, no one watching these films is going to care how many poinsettias are where and why they make sense or not make sense. They're those Christmas flowers, like the red ones that are in like the cellophane. We bought 40 of them, and we used them everywhere. By the end, they were so sad. They were just so abused. They had played everywhere. But I got so sick of being covered in glitter and fake snow that I was like, and we're done. I had fake snow and glitter in my apartment for 3 years after one of the shows I did. That fake snow gets everywhere. It's awful. Yes, Raz? I did. Yeah. So Raz is right. I worked on Coda. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's one of the films that I actually will tell people I worked on because it's really good. A lot of that film was found sets. When you get into larger film sets, you're not using studios like this. Or on larger film sets, you can be using studios like this to be putting, and we have giant studios. We have warehouses where my husband's set right now is 5 times bigger than this. It's the Met. My husband's working on Walking Dead currently. So he's making bricks and all that stuff. So they're doing studio sets. On some of the lower ones, and as 48 hours, you're not gonna be building sets. And if you are, props to you. But you're doing a lot of found locations. So when you're working on a lot of found locations, you're gonna be dealing with a lot of the homeowner stuff, and now you're dealing with people, I call non-film people muggles. It just seems to work. So when you have a homeowner who is more of a muggle, they don't know the film terminology, they don't know what's going to happen, they are completely new to this, and they are bright, starry-eyed and excited. And you are going to be filming in their home. So you are going to go in, and I always check in with them of, is there anything here that is so special that you would just be devastated if anything happened to it? Because I have a couple things like that, and they're bizarre random things, but I know everybody has them. Remove those. Just get rid of them. Just have them move them, remove them from the set, don't even look at them. Then you take a look at what's left, and a lot of the times the run and gun aspect of it is you take a look at what you have, you're like, okay, great, I have this living room, we took out a china hutch that was just full of too many breakable things that it was a grandma's, whatever. Now we have a big old empty space where that china hutch was. Now we got to figure out what to put there. You know, sometimes it's just, oh, let's just throw a piece of art up. Plants are the best thing to like have on a run and gun set. Art, plants, books, having like a run and gun kit. Sometimes I have a lot of banker boxes that I just fill with what I'm going to need for a run and gun set, if that's the mode that I'm doing. So with you guys doing your 48-hour, you're finding a house. A lot of artwork is not cleared. This might not affect you guys because you're not selling it. I don't know exactly the term like for these short films. For larger films, you get into clearance issues with books, artwork, photographs, a variety of other things. So you're doing a lot of creating your own. So if you have any graphic skills, hone those in too, because I can't tell you how many times I have needed labels for things, and now I'm sitting at night with my glass of wine or beer and making labels for 6 hours after I've worked a 12-hour day. But if you have that skill and you can kind of do it while you're on set, whatever, it's super helpful. You're just basically becoming a Swiss Army knife of skills for every department you're in. I'm sure for sound, I mean, he's gonna tell you some of the stuff that he uses that you would be shocked that are film equipment things. Yeah. I mean, when I I'm friends with a couple filmmakers, sound guys. You get to know everybody as you're around, and they pull things out, and you're like, what? And they're like, oh no, it's film equipment, and I'm just gonna leave that for him. You're welcome. And I just lost complete track of what I was saying.
What would you change about the film set?
There you go. So you're gonna bring in artwork. You're gonna bring in stuff to change it up a little bit, to add some zhuzh. A lot of houses, mine included, unless people are coming over, maybe not the tidiest, and it's not that they're not tidy. They're clean houses. There's just like the lived clutter, on surfaces, and it's tidying that up, making that less cluttery, nicer looking for the camera. You are bringing, if you have the ability to bring in rugs and curtains and be able to do stuff like that, that's great. One thing that I have in my kit that I carry everywhere with me, tension rods and shears. Because Ben's not here yet, but that is one way to make a set look far nicer almost immediately, is just put some shears up. Unless it's a boys' room, you guys could probably guys don't really put shears up in their rooms. That's when you kind of get the blinds and whatnot. But also for camera, because if you're doing a day for night, or you're blacking out the windows, a lot of the time they'll completely black out the windows, and now they need to cover it. So I just throw shears on it, because then it gets rid of reflections from windows. It makes it so you don't have to worry about what's outside. That's me being kind of lazy, I guess, because otherwise you're having to look out the window and going, that tree out there, there's a piece of trash in it. Hold on, everybody stop what you're doing. Let me run outside and remove this one random thing from the back, which is also, as an on-set dresser, one of the most important things that I think I learned from one of the women I've worked with is checking frame. So when you're filming, you've built your whole set. You have it all set up, you have it ready, and now you're filming it. And so now you're getting into the issues of, you're here, and they want to film you here, and you can see a sign that just doesn't look good. So now you're like, all right, guys, hold on, let me move this. It's coming out of their head. There's a tree coming out of this actor's head, but continuity-wise, you can't get rid of it because it was living there in the last two shots. You just have to find a way to move it. It's the checking frame to make sure that the shot looks as good as it can possibly look on camera. And sometimes it's a matter of moving stuff around to help another department. There's a C-stand in the way. You're looking at the frame and you're like, yeah, I see a C-stand leg sticking out behind there. Oh, all I have to do though, grab this trash can, put it right there, not an issue anymore. Stuff like that, you're keeping an eye on what the audience is going to see and trying to put your best foot forward. Yeah?
You're exactly right. You want to get into those distracting options. Maybe it depends on the director. If you the director, you're like, can I just do that thing? Or would you just do it?
Depends on the director. So sometimes they're touchy, sometimes they're not. And at the end of the day, they want the best product too. And they've hired you or have had a part in having you on there to help the product look even better. So a lot of the time they're not, but sometimes you're on a time constraint. So a lot of the time you're like, 2 seconds as you're running onto set so that they don't have a choice. It sometimes works, sometimes you get the F off the set. So, it depends on who it is. Some directors that I work with, they automatically know that they know me well enough that sometimes I fidget and they're like, okay, what do you want to change? And I'm like, okay, hold on. Raz is one of them. He's like, just go change it already. I'm like, all right, done. Now it's perfect. So I guess I'm going to open everything up to questions because I feel like I've talked far longer than I feel like you guys need me to. Yes.
Yeah, because that's not so you're not to but go back to the
Yeah, so I have a kit. And now that, and I really, it's just filled with a lot of crap. As my husband's like, your kit is just crap. My kit is a variety of things. So I have a clear tote box that I have caution tape, cleaning supplies, a steamer, dulling spray or hairspray. I have hanging kits. I have just random, sometimes it just ends up with like random knickknacks that I'll throw on, but it's just a box that will help you do whatever you need to do. If you're needing to hang art in something, you better have a hanging kit with you with a hammer, because otherwise, or tacks. And sometimes you're not allowed to hang things on walls or put holes in walls. Then you want to have command strips. Get the Velcro command strips. Those are, I don't know why they're by far better than the ones with like the hooks. They just are. Somehow they just work better. So having command strips in your kit with you, having gaff tape, we use what is called butyl, which is basically booger tape. That stuff you can use for everything. It's amazing. I guess it kind of depends on what I need it for. I do like Joe's Sticky. That's the most versatile. It's too thin for some projects. So sometimes you need to go and get I can't even remember the name of it right now, but there's another company that has a little bit of a thicker booger tape, and that's nice to have in addition to Joe's Sticky, because it's useful for something else. Yes, Aaron? That's a very hard question. I guess it varies, and I think it will vary for, I'm sure if you get that question, is like, was it your favorite because you worked with a bunch of your friends and it might have been kind of a shit show, but you trauma bonded and it was really fun? It could be that the actors on set were just really fun to work with, they were super down to earth, and you just had a great time. Or one that you actually want to tell people about, because they're not always the same. I did not actually enjoy working on Coda. It was a lovely film. It was beautiful, but all of our found locations were really smelly. It was about a fisherman family. Their house, if you see it, was disgusting. It was a hoarder's house. That was one of those ones where we found the house and they're like, it's perfect. The directors, location people, they're like, it's perfect. And you're like, why? Why is it perfect?
Going back to the was that
That is a really great question. There's a lot of good questions. Oh yeah, so she asked, sorry, I'm just gonna hand you the mic.
I talk very low. I asked, like, going back to her talking about negative experiences on set, like, what is it that reminds her of her passion and why she does what she does?
Sometimes it's just my film friends. You know, I will work on a really crappy project and, you know, I'm like, that's it, I'm done. I'm gonna go work at a coffee shop. I'm gonna go work at Home Depot. I mean, right now the film industry is tenuous, so be cautious. So a lot of us will be getting day jobs coming up, but yeah, a lot of the time it's my friends that I work in the industry with. And a lot of the time it's reminding me that not all of them are terrible. and that there are fun times. And sometimes it's just Raz calls me and he goes, "Hi, I'm hiring you for a project." And I'm like, "I don't want to." And he goes, "Too bad. Details are in an email. I'll see you on this date." So that sometimes happens, especially if I'm so just don't want to do it anymore. I worked on Challengers. I almost gave up film from that film. I was like, I'm done. This is awful. Why would you subject yourself to this? I haven't seen the film yet. Yeah, okay, I might. One of the sets is the tournament, the tennis tournament. It was a country club-esque place. They had tennis courts, they had pools, they had all the stuff. This is a giant set. We are doing the pro shop in one of the buildings. We're doing this whole festival. We're doing, vendors, so all sorts of things. It's huge. We spent all week on it. And come Friday, we're almost there, not quite there. They ask us to work another day. Working a 6th day, you're exhausted. It's 94 degrees. It was one of the few times I was jealous of my male coworkers for being able to remove their shirts and work. It was so hot. We're working on tennis courts. We're moving bleachers. The big metal bleachers, it started off where it was like, oh, everybody get on in the bleachers and we're gonna move them. Starts off with like 8 of us. Suddenly it's dwindling because they are heavy. And we've been doing this all week. Like I said, it's hot. And it ended up being like 4 of us because we couldn't move it with any less than 4 of us. Otherwise, I'm sure they would have tried. Finally, we're just like, guys, this is good. Like, we might be able to get out of here today, not work tomorrow. They're filming Monday. It's going to be great. Director shows up. Why is there so much green?
Outdoors.
It's a tennis court. But ahead of time, there's so much work that goes into every set. There are mood boards, lookbooks, there are drafting, there are concept art. There are so many steps before you actually build a set to get signed off on, to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So when he shows up, it's Saturday. On our 6th day, we're exhausted. They're now asking us to work Sunday because he doesn't like it. It's too green. I want to know where those reference photos were ahead of time. So now it was awful. I basically told them that I was done with that show and not to call me again, because the amount of work we put in to have the director show up, not only tell us that it looked bad, but he stood there for a good 10 minutes belittling every person there. And it was one of those where I was like, cool, I'm done. Fuck this shit. They're not even treating you like a human. You? Go ahead. Yeah.
What is speak out? I've been sat there. I was like, gaslighted, had a wage, still look like tea, and got fired. And like, not gonna put the best shit to $50 an hour. So like,
That happens.
yeah. So and work a 17-hour day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awful.
So have you ever seen anything you turn on that stuff that's happening in the ball make it tomorrow?
On Union Films.
Did somebody push back?
Union Films, that is why we have a union. I am a 481 member. I'm also ADG 800. I fully believe in unions, that they protect us, especially after working on so many low-budget films and working on union films. Like walking onto a union film and having, getting belittled or all these hours, at least you get paid for the hours. So on lower budget films, they're like $200 a day. And you're like, all right, I mean, $200 is not terrible, okay, I guess I could do it for $200 a day. Now you're on hour 13, you're not done for the day, and you're just like, this is crap. Union films, you get paid hourly. So at least when they tell you you are going to be working for more hours, there's that part of you inside where is like, you're not paying me enough for this. But then you have this moment where you're like, I'm going on OT on a 6th day. You are definitely paying me enough for it. Bring it on. I'm here for it. Someone bring me a coffee. I'm here for the next 5 hours. So, and then you had a question?
You alluded to color theory. I wonder if there's not any, in your experience on sets, any lessons or principles of color theory that you like. What are the most applicable principles of color theory that you found on sets?
When you're actually on sets, it's not, unless you're the DP, which, again, I really wish Heald was here. He's a DP that I have worked with many times. He and I, that second show I ever worked on, where I was, suddenly part of art department, that's where I met him. And now we've done many shows together, and now, he's a DP of an Oscar-winning show and stuff, and I'm super proud of him. But we started in the trenches together. But for DPs, they hold on to that a little bit more because they have more control. They're doing filters. They're throwing filters on cameras, on lights. They're controlling all of that. So the gaffer, the DP, once you're in production, it's more of them. Then it goes to editing. So it's kind of art department ahead of time where, I'm sitting and talking with the director and the DP, and they're kind of talking about how the last film I did, the movie starts on a high note, and then the lead character, something bad happens, and so there's a big part of the movie that's just the anguish that the character is going through before it gets better. So the color theory in that was, the colors that I started with were bright, vibrant, fun, for the house, fresh flowers in those colors. The DP and I had talked about how he's going to make it very warm and inviting and bright. And then when kind of shit hits the fan, if you will, the colors go far more dim. It's far more muted. It's darker. It kind of shows the feelings of what she has. And so I've removed the pillows, the blankets, the flowers, the things that I can control. And so on a film like that, where there's a lot of moving parts with color theory, it's playing with it on set where I had 2 types of pillows on the couch so that, when it's the start of it, the bright pop of color is out front, the more dusty blue is kind of behind it, and then when she's just in the dumps, that bright pop of color goes away, and when you look through the living room, it's just one muted color. And it just makes you just feel that ugh of the character and what they're feeling. And then she starts feeling better. So, color comes back to life. There's more jars of color, of flowers and colorful drawings on the walls from the kids, and there's now stuff everywhere, and it's now that the DP is bringing the light back up, it's far more warm and comfortable and beautiful, and you look around and it just looks like a house you want to hang out in. So I hope that kind of helps. Yes.
So briefly, you get one there to especially when it comes to branding and advertising, and then you get with reading it.
That's a great one. Okay, sounds good. You're next, and then that's it. Okay. Yeah, thank you. It is actually a really fascinating topic in which I have been meaning to make friends with a clearance lawyer so that I can, pick their brain for more often. So if anyone knows one, I would like their number. They're gonna be my new best friend. Otherwise, it's a whole lot of sports teams I believe are kind of, there's a lot of things that if there's a question about it, like if you're like, oh, will this be cleared or not? Don't even use it. Like, you don't even want to play into that. So for artwork, there's clearances is like a whole nother thing I could talk about for another hour. You can get clearance on things that is not your work if it's a certain amount of time passed. So for artwork, for paintings, photographs, things like that, if it has an artist's name on it, you cannot use it unless you get a signed clearance form from said artist, which is one of my favorite things to do. Find local artists. It's the best thing because you get their artwork out there and you're not having to deal with clearances. You know all your artwork is cleared. You're not worried about it. But clearances are hard. Apple Computer, they will only give you clearance if it's a hero. If it is a villain or a bad guy, you do not get to use Apple products. Yeah. So there's things like that where some places will give you clearance if you call them, send them the paperwork in. They're great about it. There's breweries that are great with it. You can get clearance on like alcohol so that if there's a bar scene, you're able to show the beer bottle without having to make it. Having local anything just like ups the production value, like a bunch. But having to create it, the clearances, that can get to be a large nightmare. There's a couple that are kind of, I don't know. I think honestly, like if there's a question, just don't do it, especially in the larger films as you get into bigger films. Don't ever use Coca-Cola or have it in the background in any way. They actually have a whole team in their law department that scrub films and commercials for their branding and will sue you. Yeah. So there's companies like that where unless you get the clearance from them, like you don't even let it be out of focus in the background. Because if you know, like, oh, we all know Coca-Cola branding. We know the red, we know the white, we know whatever it is. If you see that even out of focus, cover it. Yes.
Hi, I'm Brad.
I know, I've mentioned him a couple times.
I'm just over there. There are two things you can bring up for you as well. Hi, so this is my dog. She has separation anxiety. She can't. The intended use is important. So, for example, if you're going into a bookstore and you're something in that bookstore, you cannot really possibly. You have all the money in the world that you're using those books.
It's awful.
Just back. You lock it through that. The location itself constantly. And then the other thing is what's intended use. If you have, let's just say, a Coors Light bottle and you break it and your character stabs someone with that bottle, that's not intended use.
That could be bad because Coors Light will be like, you used my product as a weapon?
Yes. And the big thing is, especially in something like the 48, use whatever that hell you want because you're not most likely profiting from that.
It's really all about the profit. So if you're selling it, yeah. Like if it's a low budget and you're not making any money, they don't care. But if you're making money, they want a piece.
No, they got profit, so let them go about it.
Yep. Okay, last question. Go ahead. Oh, that is a good one. So, 481 is the New England film mechanics. Blah, 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 blah. Aaron, do you remember the? It's the. Yeah, stage workers, whatever. So the local union for Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, not Connecticut because New York has that, don't ask, is 481. So 481 is a Boston-based, it is a blanket union for the majority of the different departments and uses. So Aaron and I are both in the same union. I work in art department, he's a sound guy. It's the same union here. If you are in New York, they're 52. It's a different union. If you want to do scenic work, though, that is a different union. That is 829. If you want to be a scenic, you actually have to take a test to get into that union. Not that it's, you know, if you can draw and paint, it's not a big deal, but, you know. There's also 600, there's a lot of unions. Like I said, If you want to get into a union, I would suggest 481 because it will give you the most experience. It will give you the most, it's also not the most expensive, I guess is also it. So it'll help you figure out if you want to join the Cinematographers Union, which is very expensive to join. A good friend of mine had to sell his entire camera equipment so he could pay for his dues when he got in. I just joined the Art Directors Guild. That was a pretty penny. Yeah. So there's some unions that are expensive, but the reason is because you're going to be in a position eventually, hopefully, that you are going to be making that back. But of course, I got in and we are going into a strike, so this is super fun. So there's that. So if you are interested in the union, talk to me or Aaron or Ben Heald or, you need to have a sponsor to get in. You can get on the overhire list by calling the union hall and putting your name and what you would like to do. So you can get on the overhire list for any films. The big issue currently is that there are no films going on there are not many films going on. There are a couple, but everybody and their mom want them. Like, I'm not even on a couple of them because I just didn't feel like fighting for, my one spot to hang out at the truck all day, which is lovely, don't get me wrong. So that's, and you can feel free to ask questions or talk to us around and later.